All right. It's like we can see people filtering in as we look to get started here. We've got the chat open today, which I know that we don't always have the chat open. So this is kind of a fun treat. So as you're filtering in and you're getting your coffee and you're sitting down, excited to join us, drop in the chat where you're from. Would love to know where you're joining us from. Love to know what the weather is like there. It's a balmy 20 something degrees here in New Hampshire. Amy, what's the weather like near you?
It is a negative 15-degree wind chill.
Love
No,
it.
no school here in Ohio today. So
I love it. That's awesome. How about you, Jonathan?
Actually, same here in Northeast Indiana. I think it's 0 with wind chills in the negative somewhere. I just choose to stay in my dungeon here. So
Yeah, that's a good
mhm,
choice. I think it's a
yeah,
safe choice. Yeah, I
so not very
appreciate
windy
that.
down here.
Yeah, I know. I think all the folks from Southern California are kind of, holding their tongue out of respect, which I appreciate. So we all don't feel massively jealous, but yeah, I would love to know. We got a lot of folks from all over, and it's always fun to sort of see where people are joining us from. And we're so thankful you guys have joined us today. It's going to be a really great chat, really interesting topic to kind of walk you through a lot of what we did with F&M Bank. I'm so pleased at what we've got for you today. If you've been on any of my other webinars, I think this one's going to be a little bit different because we've got really a conversational approach. And if you haven't joined me before, my name is Christina Baker. I am the digital strategy lead here at Silvertech. I'm going to run through some quick intros as we kind of settle into our conversation today. Silvertech is a full service digital agency. We work with clients across the board, but we do specialize very highly in financial institutions. So it's a great topic, and we're so happy you're here to join us. So I'm going to pass it over to Amy. Amy, if you want to go ahead and do a quick intro.
yeah, hello, good afternoon. I'm Amy Cover. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at F&M Bank. I lead all things marketing, communications, public relations, customer experience, product dev here at the bank. We're located in Archbold, Ohio. We're about a $3.2 billion asset bank. So excited to be with everybody today.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you, Amy. And we're also joined by our friend, Jonathan Reed. So Jonathan, hit us with your awesome intro.
Oh boy, you really set me up for that one. Jonathan Reed, Sitefinity. I prefer solutions engineer, but hey, we'll go with sales too. But I take care of a lot of demonstrations for the Sitefinity product, mostly focused in North America, but work very closely with the Silvertech team in technical enablement and obviously sales processes as well. And we'll be covering, Sitefinity as a whole as a digital experience platform, Insight, which is our journey analysis tool, which we get into later, our native chat platform, and I really drink all the Progress software champagne, where we have a ton of other different products as well. So I will be coming in a little bit later and talking about some of that stuff.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jonathan. So we've got a packed agenda for you today, but don't look at this and get overwhelmed. We're not going to slide you to death. We're going to be much more conversational as we kind of walk through the process. But these are some of the things that we really wanted to lay out, that we want to touch on as we talk through what it looks like. How do you start with a web rebuild and a digital transformation road mapping exercise? Where do you start? What are the things to think about? And how does that kind of all come together? And then I really want to leave you with some key takeaways and tips to get started. So when you leave here today, my hope is that you'll feel energized, excited, and have some actionable next steps. But before we even get to all of that, let's take a quick poll. We really want to understand, where are you at currently in your digital transformation? So are you in those early planning and exploration stages, just kind of thinking about it, marinating on it? Are you looking at your technology requirements? Are you in that implementation piece? There's so much that goes into crafting digital transformation and what that looks like. And especially today, where we see technology accelerate at such a rapid pace, and we're able to bring in and connect so many different platforms, it really can be kind of daunting. So I'm really curious where everyone is at. So make sure you take that vote, because I think you'll be surprised how many folks are in your boat when it comes to where they're at in their road mapping and strategy exercises as well. So yeah, definitely take that. This is the part where I always say I wish we had some Jeopardy music that I could cue up, because I think would add a fun thing. And I'm gonna talk to my friends at Financial Brand, and we're gonna figure that out for the next one. So definitely join us for the next one. But let's take a look at some of these results. It looks like, most folks were in that expanding digital capabilities. Very common. Most clients come to me and they have a pretty good stack, but they're looking at, where are the gaps and where can we expand some things, or maybe even go a little bit deeper with those platforms we're already using. The fact that you're in that early planning and exploration stage, a lot of folks in that too. Don't look around. They say comparison is the thief of joy, right? Like, don't look around, don't get too nervous. Think about where you're at, what your team is at, where your leadership team is at, where your goals are, and really think through some of that. It's totally fine to be in that stage, and that's where you can really start to leverage a digital partner. And we'll kind of get to that bit later. But that was a really great response. I think, when we talk about it, what does that early stage look like? And that's where we can really start to talk through exploring that need for a redesigned website. So this is where I'm going to pass it to Amy, because I'd really love to hear. I don't know what I don't know until I met Amy. I don't know what the conversations were ahead of time. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Amy, on what that conversation how it started to form.
Yeah, so I'm sure like many of you in your organizations, everybody's got that digital transformation on their mind, right? And so as we started to put that into focus here at the bank, one of the first things that we knew we needed to explore was a new website platform. We were on a legacy WordPress system. And so it really left us with a limited understanding of our customers and their behaviors and what their preferences were. After all, your website it's oftentimes the first reflection of your brand. And for us, it's really our busiest branch office that we have. So it's really important to us to be able to, make that a reflection of how we want our customers to engage with us. And so not to mention on the legacy system, we had some internal challenges around slow load times, not being able to effectively get our search engine optimization where we wanted it to be, and our organic search, which was also affecting our digital marketing efforts on the back end. So we were handcuffed, really, knowing, as an organization, what our customer experience goals were for the future, our digital goals, and our overarching strategic plan goals for the next few years. So we had no ability to really be proactive about the customer journeys, or even the opportunity to even start to think about some personalization efforts. So I think we all know that customers want to do business with brands that they think understand them, right? I mean, that's what we're all used to. That's what the big brands do. That's why we all like to shop on Amazon, right? They know what we need before we know what we need. So as time went on, it was really, really glaring to us that we needed a platform that could help us do just that and get us to where we wanted to be, help us optimize our SEO efforts and our digital marketing efforts to get the most out of what we have a fairly large marketing budget. And so we want to make sure that we're using those dollars effectively. So we knew, what we needed. Step one of our transformation was really to kick off this website redesign process and project to get us where we want to go.
Yeah. And I think you bring up so many great points, because obviously as marketers, we're trained to think of the customer first and the customer experience first. And there's so many great reasons that you just laid out that why, the website wasn't performing and really wasn't meeting the needs of the customer. But the sort of back end part of that too, that I think kind of gets overlooked a lot, is how easy is it to manage? I mean, ultimately, if your team is stressed out, if it's not working well, if you're constantly doing workarounds, you're not able to actually use it in your marketing efforts, how valuable of an asset does it really become? And I think that's an important piece that sometimes isn't given enough credence, because we have to be able to use it and manage it and have it be intuitive in order to really enact those programs, and even those higher level programs that we're looking at.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the workarounds. It felt like we were spending more time on the legacy system trying to, okay, yeah, we can do that if we build this workaround in it. And it was just becoming increasingly difficult for our team to manage internally.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I think, when we start talking about that, and I'm sure that as you were kind of talking through this, you really start to think about your goals. So can you kind of walk us through what those conversations were like?
Yeah, so internally, as I mentioned on the last slide, we really aligned our website transformation goals with our overall bank strategic plan goals. That has a heavy focus on digital transformation and customer experience. We are firm believers that those strategies go hand in hand, and you can't be successful in one without the other. And so with that, it was really about how can we scale our digital solutions to meet the ever-changing needs of our customers, and how can we meet them where they're at with relevant messaging that really, hits home with them. But also on the back end, providing, myself and my team with the data and analytics that we need to make the informed marketing decisions. I think, as a community bank and community bankers out there, I think we're notoriously bad at using the data that we have access to. And so how do we overcome that? And that was really eye-opening for us, because as Christina mentioned, marketing today is really, it's all about the customer and it's how we interact with them. And we have to interact with them in ways that they want to interact with us. It's no longer, we can't expect them to come, to us. And so a lot of times that's through this amazing digital experience that we're going to talk about today. And so we really needed a robust platform that would be easy to manage on the back end for us to make changes and updates, but then really let us lean into that data that would help us set us up for success now and into the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like, when you're kind of talking through all of this and you start to take stock of like, okay, here's where we want to go, here's kind of where we are. That's what the point where you start to think about, okay, I think I might need some help here. So can you kind of talk through like how did you decide when to reach out and go about finding an agency?
Yeah, so our team's grown a lot here in the last couple of years, but when we, started this process, it's just myself and another individual. And so that's really, really tough. You have all these big dreams and goals and ideas, and what needs to be done. But then it was pretty eye-opening that, yeah, we need somebody to help walk us through this process that's done it before. And also, in the banking industry, it's so highly regulated that we really wanted a partner that understood those challenges as well as the strategy challenges that we were having, putting these things into action. So what we did was we brought in 3 other agencies outside of Silvertech. We did some extreme due diligence around these things. And, I'll never forget the day that I met with Silvertech, and it was just like a light bulb turned on, for me personally. I really felt like, wow, these guys get it. They understand digital, they understand web, they understand the industry that we're in and the challenges that we face every day. And so what started as an initial conversation about, the bank's needs and challenges and pain points, I quickly realized that, collaborating with them on a number of our digital transformation needs, including a roadmap that we'll talk about a little bit later, was, it was really what we needed to kick us into gear. I don't know about a lot of you on the call, but it seems like we've been talking about this digital transformation strategy for years. And it was just like you were on a hamster wheel, just going around and around. And so we really needed a partner that could help us put that into actionable timelines and steps, and take a look at our tech stack and things like that to really help us get us over the hump.
Yeah, and we're so proud to be partners with F&M, and I think we've had such a great relationship in it. And this is the kind of stuff that, I'm sure like when you met me, I tend to get very excited. So I was very excited to tackle this. And when we started really teasing through, like listening to you and listening to what you were, where you wanted to go and what your internal resources were like, where you had been, and we really start to have those conversations, it became very important, it became very apparent that we did need a cohesive digital roadmap, because there are just so many things, and that everything has dependencies, and there's, you have to do this before you do that, and there's, different teams involved and management and budget. And that's where it became very clear, like, what, we need to take a look at what do the next few years look like, how can we structure this in a way that's achievable for your team, in a way that makes sense to leadership, because ultimately, we need to make sure that leadership is included. And also, how do we manage, those different teams? What does that look like? Bandwidth of different teams, resourcing challenges maybe within different teams, the budgets, of course. All of those things are the things that we start to look at when we form these digital roadmaps. And so when we talk about that, we start to look at, how can we start to have those conversations? And we look at things like our system integrations. We take it from a technical standpoint, even. What are those third-party platforms we may be looking to integrate with over time to enhance the customer experience? And maybe just to keep up with our competitors or give us more data that we can then use to create marketing strategy that's really going to have some ROI behind it. We take a look at like IT collaboration. How is that going to work? And your IT person was heavily involved in the roadmap stage as well, because we really wanted to make sure that they felt included and heard and understood, and that they were able to point out to us, hey, we think we're kind of heading in this direction. Oftentimes we can be a little bit siloed and we don't necessarily know what their thoughts are, what their plans for their department might be. And the relationship between marketing and IT has really changed in the last 5 to 10 years. It's become one that is very critical to success. So I always recommend working very closely with your IT suite, because it's incredibly important that we get their blessing on things and that they understand why we're asking for the things that we're asking for. And then finally, it's that future focus piece of it, right? We want to make sure that we're planning for our next steps. We're setting the foundations, right? Because there's nothing worse than having an idea and finding out to go fix things or redevelop or whatever it might be. We want to be really future proofed and future thinking, so that we can be putting those things into place today to help us get where we need to go. And then from that came this sort of framework. And here's an example of one of the items. We had a number of milestones. We have a number of milestones on this roadmap, and I chose just a couple to share that will resonate with our talk today. But we really identified major projects from sort of ancillary projects, and then we looked at a number of sort of KPIs around what business value, customer value. We looked at indicators like budget, timeline, what are those teams involved, so that we can start to really bucketize a lot of this and start to see what does that cadence look like, and is that achievable for us? No one wants a plan that's not achievable. As your digital partner, it's my job to help you see this is what we can probably achieve, based on our experience, and then you give me feedback and we have this collaborative conversation around what do we think we can really do here, what makes the most sense. So Amy, how did you feel about this framework? Do you think it sort of helped your team focus?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the structure and just having it there was super helpful to us. I've been at the bank 14 years. I think this is the fourth website redesign that I've been a part of, and every other one was pretty much just like copy paste, right? We're just taking what's there and we're making it look a little bit better. And this really helped guide us to like, this is a much bigger project than that. When we need to do it the right way. So this is super helpful for us to look back on, reference it. Our senior leadership team loved being able to go in and see, exactly where we were at on the roadmap, and still are. I mean, you see 2026 and beyond there, so we're not done.
We are not done. We got a lot of work to
Amy.
do. It's good, all good stuff though. And I also
Amy,
want to kind of, oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
real quick from
Sure.
the audience, how did you gather, direct customer feedback to inform your website transformation? So it kind of fits in well, I think, with what we're covering here.
Yeah, I love that question. We're actually going to be addressing that a little bit later on when we start going a little bit into the redesign process. So we've got some great slides on that, which I'm really excited to share. But I would say in the sort of initial stages, it was, a lot more of the sort of overarching data analytics that we were able to pull out. And then Amy, I think you had some survey data as well, customer data that you shared with us, some direct feedback there.
We do. We partner with a company to do customer feedback surveys. And so we took some of that and put it into the initial site map and build. And then as we'll get into it a little bit later, we'll let you know how we did some more actionable things.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to throw this one up here just to show that we can see as we got sort of into more of those ancillary projects, we also called out, prerequisites of each step, because that has been a common roadblock I've seen with clients is they don't understand the dependencies between others, or they maybe just haven't thought of it in that way. So it's always great to call out, and so we can start to see how that house begins to be built brick by brick. And I think that's a really important piece when you're developing a roadmap. But let's talk about that website redesign process. Before we jump into that, let's take a quick poll. I would be really curious to know, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to leveraging data? Oftentimes the feedback I hear is, well, we don't have the tools and resources to properly track the data. Or, our legal team is a little bit nervous and they don't really want us to have that data with the privacy laws, and they're sort of more risk averse, so we don't do much collection. Something I commonly hear is, we have a bunch of data, but what do we do with it? We don't even know if we have access to it because IT has access to it. And when we have a difficulty getting, access to the data. And then another common one is we just don't know what data to focus on. And I think that these are all really common issues, because we think about data, and you come to webinars like these and you think, I've got to get all the data. And it's like, yeah, it's great. We want to have as much data as we can because we want to be able to inform our marketing efforts as best we possibly can. But what are you doing with the data? The intent is not just to collect random pieces of data. The intent is to get insight out of it. So really, what do we do with it, and how do we extract that insight? Sounds like the not having tools and resources is our number one answer. And I totally get that. It can be cumbersome. It can be difficult. Sometimes you need a technical implementation depending on what your website looks like. Really understanding. And then it's that insight piece, right? How do we parse through it? And that's another great thing that a digital partner can bring to you, is helping you see the insight out of the data and sort of helping work with you so that when you that are turned loose, you can look at the data yourself and start to piece out some of that. But also just, as a sounding board, hey, we've got this going on. What do you think about that? I think that's a really great way to leverage a digital partner. And that's what your partner should be doing, because ultimately it is a partnership. So let's talk through bringing website strategy and integration to life. So when we talked about this, we started to look at doing some of those initial discovery sessions, going through those goals. We had done a lot of that work in that road mapping stage. So when we decided, okay, now it's time to hit the ground running on the website, we were in a great place and we had done a lot of this work. So we really started to think through, what does it mean? What does it mean to use our data insight, and what kind of analysis can we pull out of that? What does it mean to have a user-centric approach, and how is that really going to come through? One of the key pieces that we started to use the data for was in understanding our audiences. So we did go through a persona and journey exercise where we really looked very clearly at our audience segments, what they value, what their needs are, where are their pain points. And that really started to help us form sort of the bones of what we were trying to do here from a sitemap perspective, and then also from a functionality perspective. Do we need more video? We started to look at, what types of functionality do we need to support this? And then what types of content efforts would we need to support that as well? So this exercise was really helpful in us getting a deeper, more nitty-gritty knowledge of those audience segments. And I'm really curious, Amy, what did you think about this? Did you sort of compare it to reality, and how did you feel they lined up?
Yeah, I thought it was super helpful. It's really helped us aid in our targeting efforts, as well as, like you mentioned, the actual site build, right? And I don't, I know we're going to talk a little bit about, some of the things we did with customers, but we actually segmented customers into some of these audiences and had them do our user testing. And so that was so helpful for us to make sure that, what we think makes sense also makes sense to the customer, and that, we're creating the relevant content that they are seeking from us.
Yeah, and you really hit it on the nose right there. What we think is relevant actually is relevant. And that's the trap, right? That we can fall into so easily. We are so focused, and we know our industry inside and out. We know our business inside and out. And we think that we know our customers inside and out. And so therefore they must want this. And it really takes a moment of that stepping back and just listening and processing and kind of giving it a little bit of space for you to see that maybe there's something else here that we're missing, or maybe there's something more that we can deliver. And I think that's why this exercise is so key. But I'm excited to hear you say about the user testing. I was thrilled when we decided to do the user testing because this is when it starts to get really fun, right? And we really did. We segmented out folks in our user testing, kind of categorized them in some of those persona buckets to see how is this going to work for them. So what we did is we ended up moving through that part of the process. We came up with a new navigation. We came up with a new design, and we wanted to test it with real live users, real live customers in the bank. So what we ended up doing is we did a first click testing exercise where we looked at where are people clicking first? Are they hitting the nose? We talk so much in digital about the short attention span of users, and it really cannot be stated enough how short the attention span of users is. So we really have such a small window to get it right. And this was a great way for us to do a little gut check, right? Here's where we're thinking. This is where we have all this data to back it up. We have done all this research, but let's go through one more round of testing and just make sure that it resonates with the users. So what we did was we actually went on site and did this user testing in person at branches, which was really exciting because we were able to really interact with customers and get to understand them, how they were feeling, how they navigated, where they were stumbling, and it really gave us some actionable items to be able to make tweaks in real time. So I'm wondering, Amy, because I had such a great experience with that on-site user testing, but I'm wondering your opinion. Like, how did you feel about it? Were there any surprises that came out?
Yeah, I think the user testing on site was a great addition to the original project plan. It's something we kind of added later on. And I think there's always a few surprises, right? Things in placement that we thought, this would look good here, this should go here, wasn't necessarily the path that some of the customers were taking. So we were able to take that and go back and adjust the site map accordingly. It wasn't, anything too glaring, but it definitely helped us to not have to make those changes later on when you're too far down the process. I think it's also was surprising to me how eager the customers were to participate in this.
Yeah,
And it's like, because everybody's on a rush, right? You come to the
right.
branch, come to do what you want to do. And we had quite a few people stop, and we were at two of our most heavily trafficked offices. And we had a lot of people stop and do it, and a lot of compliments around how they appreciated their voice being heard and something that really does affect them at the end
Right.
of the day. And so I thought it was a great addition to add that to the plan.
Yeah. And they got a great piece of swag. So I mean, everybody wins. Everybody wins, right?
Yeah.
So let's take another poll. I would love to know, because we've talked now about data, different types of data, analytics data, data from surveys. Now we've got our user testing data that we're folding in. So I'm really curious what types of customer data you're using, or do you use before launching different digital initiatives. And this doesn't have to be necessarily a full web rebuild. It could be campaigns. It could be even product development. I would love to hear what some of those types of data you're using are, because it's really interesting. There's so much data out there, and really honing in on what makes sense for the initiative is a very key part of it, because not all types of data are going to be relevant, right? We want to understand, like, what is going to help me here? What is relevant to this exercise? What am I trying to get out of this exercise? And to Amy's point, we were really looking for that extra check of what our proposed strategy would be. Ultimately, we don't want to cause any type of user frustration. So even having that final sort of polish, and you'll see what the results were here in a few minutes, really was able to give us the tweaks we needed just to make sure we're completely in line with what our customer expectations are and how they want to navigate. So taking a look at, some of the results that have come in through here, customer feedback surveys, all of the above. You guys are data fiends. I love it. There's so much great stuff here that we can start to use when we start shaping our efforts. And I would say, when you are starting out on this journey, it's a great exercise to kind of collect all of that and start to sort through what is going to be relevant and how can we start to put these puzzle pieces together to show, the full picture of what our customer looks like. So let's talk through some of that. And I really kept this demographic slide because I thought it was really interesting. And this was based on the survey questions that we ran on site. We did have a quick screener just to kind of understand where our usability was and engagement was. And what I thought was really interesting about this is that, now think about it, we're on site. We are in a branch. We have, if you look at this age data here, we've got a strong segment in that 51 to 70 range and a strong segment in that 31 to 50 range. So if you're a bank and you're thinking about how can I encourage my users to self-serve, this was a great exercise because we were able to really target those folks that are more used to coming into the branch. And we love to see them. Don't get us wrong. We don't want them to stop coming in. We just want them to know that it's available digitally as well if they want to self-serve on their own time. So this was a great targeting exercise because it sort of sort of targeted those folks that are used to coming in more than someone who would be higher likelihood of engaging online. As you can see here, we had a number of users take the test, and the average time was only about 4 minutes. So these are not long tests we're talking about. This was not a cumbersome exercise. And like Amy said, I too was like kind of jazzed at how many people were excited to take it. And really, it was a short morning, but it was a great morning that really took a lot of interesting people and brought them forward. And I thought it was an excellent exercise. So let's kind of talk through the results. What did we end up learning? Here's a great example of one of the questions, and this was a really easy one, right? This is kind of a softball. Where is the routing number? And the reason we chose this question specifically, and I'm not going to go through every question we did because there was about 10 or I think around 15 questions, but I want to pull out this one specifically because this is one that consistently folks are searching for. I think every single bank I've ever worked with, the #1 search term on their site is routing number. So this is one we really wanted to test. And I think what's interesting about this is if you look at it, if you look at the data sort of in a vacuum, you can see that it says there's specific areas of failure. And I think what's interesting is that areas of failure makes it sound like, well, people couldn't find what they were looking for. And that's not necessarily true because what we know is that folks like to engage in different ways online. Some folks, they want to go through the navigation and they will follow the prompts. Other people just hit that search bar and they are out of there. I had one woman who I was sitting with who just went right down to the footer and looked for everything in the footer. So we have different ways of engaging. And what this type of exercise can do is really highlight what are those preferences and make sure that we have multiple pathways for folks to find what they are looking for based on how they like to engage on the web. Another question we had was really around, some of those loan options and understanding how are folks going to be able to find this. We want to have a high success rate, which I think is great because we want to really target, at this time, we were really targeting a lot of the borrowing initiatives. So I would encourage everyone to think about what are the initiatives we're trying to target and grow so that way we can make sure we're well aligned to get users to the area that we want them to go to.
Hey, Christine, I got a great
Yeah.
question that fits right in here.
I
So,
love it. Let's do it.
with banks, your audience is, well, everyone. It's hard to target everyone because some people are more well-versed, as you've
Yep.
just pointed out, with technology, while some aren't, right? How did you design website based on your wide audience? I think you answered that pretty well in the previous slide, but any other general ideas about, how we design for, well, everyone?
Yeah, it's a really great question because that's part of what that persona and user journey exercise is meant to do. When we design those, we craft those audience segment avatars in a way. We look at a lot of different things. We look at, age, we look at demographic information, we look at, what are their interests in products and things like that, because we want to cover that spectrum, right? We want to make sure we're not just talking about people who want to open a savings account who are Gen Zers, and that's it. They engage very differently than a senior who is looking for financial advice. It's a very different journey. And that's where we really suss out what are those nuances is in that beginning step. And then when we start to get through, the user testing, when we look at design and functionality, that's something that's top of mind for me is I'm very big on making sure that users can convert no matter where they are or how they like to engage. So where you see these sort of hot spots on this chart here from our user testing is you can start to decide, okay, well, it looks like, almost a quarter of our people were kind of going to the search bar here, where other people were not. And we start to kind of see what are those preferences and those trends start to emerge. And we make note of them. We want to make sure things are prominently displayed, they're eye-catching. We have the science and the data behind how folks interact on websites, in order to make sure we're placing things on page in a thoughtful in a thoughtful way. But we also want to kind of not hang our hat on that totally, because to your point, Jonathan, if we're targeting just one type of user, just one type of way of engagement, we're going to be missing out on everybody else. So we
Sure.
make note of it, we collect it, but we want to make sure we also think, okay, how else do we want to get to that information?
Yeah, and I think, at least from a general, site design perspective, although we want to design for everyone, there's always going to be that whatever. So let's
Right.
try to design for most people, right?
Yes.
And only, Christina, because you opened this Pandora's box to talk about personas a little bit. And again, I'm pretty sure we cover this in a little bit more depth later, so feel free to deflect this if you'd like. But how do we address substantially different personas, right? In other words, do you prioritize or deprioritize, or did you try to address the everyone's perspective? Now, again, with personas, it kind of, there's multiple ways to do that. So feel free to deflect this. I know we cover this later, but what do we do in those kind of cases? Again, that everyone bucket always is going to exist, and
Yep.
everyone can't be everyone. I love it to be, but there's always
It's
going to be that
true.
one person. There's the footer navigator, there's that searcher, and then there's the
Yep.
you saw the bird's nests on there as well. That's my favorite term when it comes to watching
Yeah, I
those heat
love it.
maps. But
That's a good one.
yeah, what do we do with personas that could widely differ?
Yeah, I think the reality is we're not going to be everything to everyone. That is the reality. We have to make priority calls like we do with anything in life, and I think, for as marketers, we're used to this, right? Because I mean, come on, I'm not even going to take a poll on this one because I know everybody would raise their hand, but how many times have you been brought an idea by someone not in marketing and you just think that is so not what we're doing here? That is so off base, right? Because we realize this is not our target. This is not in line with our goals. This is not what we're looking to do. So when we talk about personas and who do we, target for, we have that overarching, here's our sort of base set of everybody that we want to target with our different product lines, with our thought leadership, even from an employment perspective. I almost always recommend we do a career persona because hiring is so difficult. So how do we attract those folks? So we really think about it holistically in terms of everyone who's visiting the site, but then we narrow in on a few and we say, okay, what does this look like? And we talked about that behavioral and demographic data that can really help us understand who are those key segments, who are those revenue drivers that we really need to be catering for so that they can convert with us and become loyal customers over, something that is maybe important for sure, but could be deprioritized at the moment.
Yeah, and Christina, if I could just add one
Sure.
thing, just, from a fellow banker perspective, you gotta, it can seem like a daunting thing because there are so many different types of customers. So what we did in partnership with Silvertech is identify, okay, what are our top, I think we have 6 total personas. And so where are we trying to drive business? What are we wanting? And then so making sure that those are catered to what we're trying to attract and retain within the institution helps you kind of narrow in on what your focus is, because it can seem definitely overwhelming for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And all great questions and points of discussion. And that's something that we work collaboratively with clients on and help guide you to around and understanding your goals. And that's why that piece is so critical because not every bank is the same. Everyone's different goals. So we need to really understand what your goals are and really how we can help you achieve them. Now I've left this slide up for far too long because it is somewhat of a depressing slide. If you just glance at it, you say, well, geez, if everyone's only using the site for online banking, what are we doing here? And I thought it was interesting to bring this up because I think what it really, I challenge you to think about it in terms of, I use the site for online banking. Yeah, okay, but you're still hitting that homepage. You're seeing what's on that homepage. If we know you're in online banking, here's a data collection opportunity for us. Here's an opportunity for cross-selling. Here's an opportunity to grow a little bit deeper in the customer and understand what is their behavior in online banking and how can we market to them more effectively. This is a piece of feedback that we hear sometimes that I think folks will take maybe in a more negative way. And I would challenge you to think about it more optimistically and think about, if that is the case, that we're coming to the site for online banking, then we need to make sure we're making the most of that homepage real estate, and that we're making the most of the real estate that our users see before they hit that online banking step. So let's talk through, what did we change? We got this data, we did our user testing, it was awesome, gave it a lot of awesome swag, met some great people. What did we end up changing? Well, what we ended up changing is we did some small tweaks around renaming sections. We looked at where some of that failure data was and really understood what was getting lost, and one thing that we had kind of gone back and forth on was the term small business. And, we have a large agriculture component for F&M. And so do those users, do those customers think of themselves as small businesses, or do they think of themselves as agriculture? And what we found through our user testing is they really prefer that term agriculture. So we did end up changing that labeling to remove a barrier and some user frustration there. We also had taken this approach around, being very personal in our navigation. Your bank, your financial goals. Really trying to drive home what we're doing versus less of a product-based approach. And one of those sections was your financial life, which was really meant to convey our thought leadership, our articles, all those kinds of great financial education pieces. And what we find is people were kind of missing that. They were missing the point of it. And as much as it pained me, because I loved that term, your financial life, you can't, the data doesn't lie, right? So we had to listen to it, and we did end up tweaking that into financial resources. And then we also got some great design feedback since they were already there. We were like, hey, what do you think about this design? Did you like it? What would you suggest to change? And we did end up making some design tweaks even late in the evening before we presented to leadership the next day, because we wanted to really take that feedback and action on it. So what happened next? Well, here is a great indicator of what the F&M site used to look like and what the new F&M site looks like. So what are those tangible results? What we saw was a significant increase in website engagement. We saw faster load times. We saw improved performance. We saw a massive improvement in organic search and SEO. And then we also saw some increased customer satisfaction as well. We were hearing great feedback. And I would love to hear, Amy, what were you hearing from customers once the site loaded?
I think the number one overarching comment was about the load times. Also about the navigation and the ease of use of the site. And then just internally, I have some numbers here just because I think they're mind blowing. I actually just pulled these together. We had a strategic plan meeting yesterday. And so in terms of, we had 107% increase in new website visitors, 69% increase in returning website visitors, and a 378% increase in conversions. So those results really speak to, okay, how bad probably our last site was, but also
how awesome the new one is. Only
yeah,
how awesome the new one is.
but to the fact that it really has improved our SEO efforts, our digital marketing efforts. They're more qualified leads going to the site. They're coming back to the site,
Yes.
which to me is the most important part, because they're still engaged, they're still following you, and coming back, whether they convert on that first time or that second time or that fifth time when they're ready. To me, that's a very, very important statistic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you highlighted that piece, because I think that returning user metric is not given enough weight. And it really is critical, because the data has shown that the more often a returning visitor is something like 3 times more likely to convert. And that really dovetails well into our talk about personalization. When we start looking at personalization and we start crafting a personalization strategy, and that's kind of where we're at now, where we're in this sort of beginning stages of implementing personalization and starting to test it, that returning user becomes that much more important, because we can target them so much more effectively to push that conversion along. So I'm really curious with everyone, what is your current solution allow you to do when it comes to personalization? Do you use data for that? Do you have some, really robust personalization effort going right now? Are you kind of like, we're in the testing stage, or maybe even just thinking about personalization? I would be really curious to hear where everyone falls, because it's very interesting. I think we fall into this trap of thinking, number one, that personalization is so complicated. And it really does not have to be. And in fact, I would argue that it should not be as you are getting started, because it's so important that we test and test and test and see what works before we expand it out to additional audience segments, additional campaigns. And then number two, I think we all have the sense of like, well, everybody else is doing it. And I think that's not true. I think when you see these poll results come back, you'll see that there's a lot of folks that are really young in their personalization journey, and that's a-okay. Like it takes a little bit to get there, as we've seen. We had to do a big website. We had to do a website effort and remodel the website and come up with a platform that's going to make sense and functionality that's going to sustain this. And then there's a strategy piece to that personalization effort as well. We have to go through that exercise and understanding, what are we doing this for? What are we trying to achieve? What does this target segment need? And then also looking at the data of what performs and what really affects conversion. So I think that there's a lot to it, and I think that it's important that we not get overwhelmed though, and we realize we can start small. So taking a look at some of these poll results, we see pretty clearly 73% are at that partial or no stage, and that is very common. That I would say, you folks out there that are at that robust stage, you are knocking it out of the park, and that's great. And I would love to hear your stories. So definitely email me. You'll see at the end of the slide. Would love to hear your stories and your successes with personalization, because it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. But I would love to hear all of that. And I think for those of you that are still young in it, don't worry about it. We're doing it piece by piece, right? We're on the path, and we're going to be moving forward. So let's kind of take a look at Sitefinity Insight and how that bolts onto a website. I'm not going to read this whole slide for you, because that would be just terrible. But I want you to understand what Insight is capable of. There's so much great data in Insight, and Insight itself is a tool that kind of lays on top of our Sitefinity website. A lot of folks will ask me, well, if I have Google Analytics, why do I need Insight? I say they work together. It's not an either or. Insight's just going to give you that more granular knowledge on that customer journey, the touch points, where are they spending their time, what is impacting conversion more. And then it's also the engine that helps you fuel your personalization efforts. So when we talk about personalization, we really want to target into one or two key personas and just start small. Start, understanding this segment, really start to collect that data and help to use, all the data sources we have, whether you have a CRM or third-party data that you want to pull in, so that we can start to understand what affects the choices of this user, where are they spending their time with us. So when we talk about that, of course, there's going to be a content lift that comes with this. And this is kind of what we're working through. Amy and I are kind of working through together right now, is crafting that strategy, understanding that content lift. But I think it's important that we remember that we can source that content in a lot of ways. It may be that you have great content, we're just not serving it to someone at the right time. And that's what a personalization effort can really help you with, is how do I serve it to this person that has this interest? How do I understand that this user falls into this bucket of interest, this target segment? And how do I give them that information when they need it? Then we can do things like A/B testing. We can really start to look at things like uplift, which will tell us, the impact on conversion, and start to drive more traffic to those pieces of content that really impact conversion. There's so much here. And if you've been on any of my other webinars, I've got a lot of webinars on this one. So definitely, if you want more information on this, and you'll see at the end of the deck, I'll have my email up there. So you can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to get you that as well. But let's kind of wrap it up, because I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. So let's kind of get through key takeaways and how to get started. So key takeaways here, don't go it alone. That's my number one. And the reason for that is that you don't know what you don't know. And it's nice to have a partner just help guide you, help you understand, help you sort of form your thoughts and really start to craft some of this, because it's hard as a marketing team, especially if you're a small marketing team. It's difficult to be on top of everything. And I would say my advice is always, figure out where your resources are, be kind of really honest with yourself about what you enjoy doing and where you can, put your talents, and then hire out the rest if you can. And that's where I would say, like, utilize your agency partner to help you build that roadmap that's going to work for you. Don't take a stock roadmap. This is about you and what is going to work for you, your team, and your organization. So really have that effort. It really can be critical to your success. Start where you are. Look at what you've got. What do we have for platforms? How is it functioning? What's available to us? And then don't overthink. I think we can all get really overwhelmed. Initiatives like user testing might have been, prior to this webinar, you might have thought user testing is way out of my reach. It's probably so expensive, and it's really not. And it can give you great insight if you know how to craft it in the right way. And then always be thinking future state. Where are we going and why? And then what do we need today? What do we need to do today to get there? Do that backwards planning step. It's really important, and it can really help focus your efforts around what's going to make a measurable impact and keep you from being distracted on the things that are not. So when we talk about how do we get started, what I want you to take away from today, and I hope that you're really energized and excited to get started, audit your platforms. What platforms do you have? How are you using them? What are their capabilities? What is the cost of this platform? Am I seeing an ROI here? I would say audit your data. What platforms for data collection are you using? What data is being collected? How is that data being used? Is anybody looking at it? Who owns it? Is it IT? Is it marketing? These are questions that we would want to know because we want to know what we have access to so we can start to formulate that plan. And then I would say, take a real honest look and have a great conversation with your team and ask yourselves, can we get to where we need to go with what we have? And the answer sometimes is yes. Sometimes you have all the tools, but you just don't know how to use them all together, and maybe you need a little guidance that way. Sometimes you have all the tools, but you don't have the resources to get it done yourself, and you need some help that way. All these things are okay, but I think it takes that honest conversation to understand that. And Amy, I would kind of tip that out to you. What do you think? Like, does this resonate with you? Is there anything you want to add when it comes to getting started?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. In my mind, the best thing that we did was find a partner that would come and meet with, like you said earlier, our IT staff. A lot of times they're like, "Ooh, IT and marketing." No, we have a really, really great relationship with our IT team here, but also somebody that will take the time to meet with your leadership team, to meet with division line leaders. That's what we did. We had, I think, 2 full days of discovery sessions with different, leaders within the organization. And that, I talked earlier about how customers really valued having a voice, but you wouldn't believe how many compliments I got on just from my internal peers that really appreciated having a voice in this and being able to kind of influence the things that we're trying to do, and us being able to hear the pain points that they hear from their customers. They're the ones talking to the customers every day. And so I can't stress enough how important that is and how important that still is. We still have, strategy sessions, and it's really eye-opening every single time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all great thoughts. And I think, I think the takeaway I hope that everyone leaves with is that, you can get started today. There's a very clear place you can start. And, just don't be too nervous to reach out to a partner for some help there. I'm going to leave it up on this slide. I know we've got not too much time left for our Q&A, but I want to make sure that we open it up. And Jonathan, I feel like we didn't use you as much as I wished we would have. So I do want to give you the floor. Is there anything
Sure.
I missed on Insight that you love about it that you want to share while we wait for some questions to come in?
Yeah, obviously one of the benefits of Insight is how it is built into Sitefinity as a digital experience platform or content management system. But I want you to keep in mind it's not limited to just that. We have ways to implement it through Google Tag Manager, which could often be used in conjunction with your banking platforms. It is HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant, all these types of things, and really does focus in on customer journey analysis. So its major benefit is you define a conversion, whether it's as simple as maybe submitting a form or filling out some type of request for information about a loan, et cetera. Once you have that information, it then starts to really shine. And how it does this is through touchpoint analysis, conversion, what is uplifting that, right? Though some of those things are defined by you as a business, because each bank, even in your industry are different, right? Farmers and merchants obviously focused in on that agriculture thing. Not every bank is focused on that type of aspect or persona, right? So it really starts to define and discover information. It can then also be used as what we call a customer data platform. So we're going to build integrations into it. We might have a CRM that holds a little bit more data about a particular visitor or user or person, right? Or institution, account, whatever, right? We build this integration, and when it becomes this customer data platform, we can then start to use that data in conjunction with basic web traffic, right? So it could be page views, it could be form submissions, downloading a document like a PDF or whatever, right? Once you have sort of this central point of data, we can use that in conjunction with persona. Let's get that bigger share of the wallet, right? I already know they have a checking account, or I already know they have a car loan. So don't offer them in our homepage slider. Don't offer them a car loan. We already know they own that product, or however your terminology might work. Let's offer them something else, right? Let's offer them a CD or whatever, right? It doesn't particularly matter, but this is where Insight really does shine in perspective. And I do have some questions here as well from the group that I think are important to address. So
Yeah.
again, Insight itself, very well baked into the system. When it comes to your personalization strategy, do keep it simple. You can get a lot of value. And again, one of the benefits of Insight and its connection with Sitefinity is when we personalize content, we can actually see and track, is it attributing to things like conversion? So it's a very closed loop system. Yeah, keep the Google Analytics stuff. It's great for a holistic view of the application, but Insight really drives and delivers customer journey analysis. And the term customer can mean anything in your book of business, right? And that's really where it focuses in on. In fact, you can get all the way down to seeing an individual's journey. Went to page 1, 2, and 3, downloaded a document, filled out a form, maybe went to an offline event. I know my local bank here in my small town in Indiana, they're always at the fair or whatever. We drop our business cards in there. You could take that data, you can upload it to Insight and said, hey, they went to the fair booth or whatever, right? Yeah, I'm that guy. But you could upload that into Insight, you can know, and you could deliver a personalized experience based on that type of data. So that's really where it shines. So off to the questions here.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we had a question. Looks like you did a full rebrand in addition to the website. Would you recommend doing this at the time of a new website build? I'll let you tackle that one, Amy, first, and then I'll chime in with my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that you should. That's actually why we decided to do it at the same time. We've been around since 1897 with the same logo for that whole time. And so we knew that, this was a really, really big deal to not only us internally, but to our customers. And so we decided, to really rip the Band-Aid off all at once. Now, I will say that I think we rolled out the new brand in May, and we rolled out the website in the fall. So we did have a period of time, but so we updated, like our logo and stuff on our existing website. And so we did have a little bit of time to get any feedback from the brand in that time before we rolled out the site. But honestly, the website itself, other than the compliments we got on, how much better it was loading and those type of things, it was kind of a non-event, in conjunction with changing revamping our entire brand. But that's one of the reasons we decided to do it when we did, was because we were going through that brand transformation.
Yeah. And I think that brings a great point, and we want to when we talk about future proofing, it would be a shame if you built a brand new website and then went through a rebrand and we had to go back and change a lot of elements. It would be a real pain, and you don't want to go through that. And I wouldn't suggest doing them simultaneously, because I think the timelines of that are too difficult to align. And it can cause significant delays if the branding piece, can be so charged, and it can be quite a long discussion. So you don't want to be doing your website at the same time, because you just can't trust that those 2 elements are going to line up and one is not going to delay the other. So I wouldn't recommend it. I would say, either do it, be very close to the end when you start your website project, or have it completely concluded by the time you start your website project.
And just to add to that, we had started our brand discovery probably 18 months before this project kicked off. So we were pretty much done with that and able to take those elements, then provide them to Silvertech and make, informed decisions on the site based on what was coming. So
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Help me connect how these changes impacted SEO efficacy. Absolutely. So there's a number of technical changes. When you think about SEO and all the different things that Google uses to rank you and what are the metrics that they look at, things like page load, load speeds are a very critical metric. How the site loads on mobile is one of the critical metrics when it comes to SEO. So from just simply a technical standpoint, remediating a lot of those technical issues already gave us a boost to SEO. And then also there was that content piece, because we did go through a content exercise as we were polishing up content and reshaping it to fit in the new website. We were able to bring in some more keywords and things like that, which will also help the performance. And I think, Jonathan, you had some thoughts you want to add here?
No, I think those are also great points. From an SEO perspective in Sitefinity, it's super easy to manage. They're simple, just page properties. We also have those social sharing properties like Open Graph fields. Again, easy to manage at the content item level, news, blog posts, etc., as well at the page level, and it all handles it automatically. So all you have to do is simply fill out a form, obviously save it, publish it, and it's good to go. So
excellent. And then finally, did the roadmap include a digital asset management solution to manage marketing content assets, or was that built into the CMS platform? So we did not use a DAM or a digital asset management solution. It's not currently on our roadmap because this is not a pain point that we have at the moment. Certainly, as we continue to grow that content library over time, it will be a conversation that we have in the future. But we find that the CMS platform is working well for us, and that the content strategy that we did do as part of this effort when it comes to tagging and organizing content was enough to give us the organization that we need. But I don't know, Jonathan, if you want to chime in there.
yeah, I mean, Sitefinity itself comes with a lightweight digital asset management system, crop, resize, rotate, thumbnail management, in conjunction with responsive imagery, can oftentimes give you a high quality image performance that you need. And we also do integrate with, third-party digital asset management systems as well. We have 2 direct integrations with Frontify and Cloudinary. And of course, you can roll your own with our, APIs, but let's keep the nerdy stuff for later. But you can definitely integrate with the platform. And again, does include a lightweight digital asset management system out of the box.
Awesome. Awesome. So that seems to be most of the questions we have time for today. And I know we're a little bit over time. So thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for joining. It's been a really great presentation. I hope you got a lot of value out of it. Definitely scan that QR code and download our white paper, Crawl, Walk, Run, Fly Your Way to Personalization. It's a great one. So if you're sort of starting out on that journey, and, drop me an email. Let me know what you thought. Love to hear your feedback. If you have questions, want to talk through anything, would love to hear from you. And then also, if you're one of those robust personalization users, let me know how it's going. Would love to hear your stories and your success stories. I think it's so exciting what we can do now with the technology. So Amy and Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me on this webinar. Thanks to the Financial Brand team. And we will catch you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.